All right, crank it up. We're about to take a deep dive into one of the most iconic metal albums of all time.
Metallica's Master of Puppets.
That's right. But we're not just going to, talk about the music itself.
Nope.
We're going deeper. We've got this awesome book, Back to the Front,
Oh, yeah.
and it takes us behind the scenes of the making of the album and the crazy tour that followed in 1986.
It's like getting a backstage pass to a moment in metal history.
Exactly. Think photos, stories, interviews, the whole 9 yards.
You really get a feel for what it was like to be part of Metallica during that era.
So we're going to unpack the band's journey, their creative struggles, and how they basically changed the face of metal.
Master of Puppets was a game changer, no doubt about it.
Okay, so let's start with the album itself. I mean,
Yeah.
it's considered a masterpiece for a reason.
Definitely.
But Back to the Front shows us how they actually pushed the boundaries of metal with this one.
They were experimenting, taking risks.
Yeah, like, remember that insane opening riff on Battery?
Oh, man, that down-picking.
Intense. The book talks about how James Hetfield really honed that technique, and it became like a signature MetallicA sound.
They were always pushing themselves musically, and you have to remember, this was the 80s.
Hair metal everywhere.
Exactly. But Metallica was doing something totally different. It was darker, more complex.
And way heavier.
It resonated with people who were looking for something more raw, more authentic.
Speaking of raw, we got to talk about Cliff Burton.
Ah, the legend himself.
His bass lines on Master of Puppets are just insane.
Pure genius.
The book tells these incredible stories about him, about his personality, his musicality.
He was classically trained, you know?
No way, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He brought this whole other level of sophistication to Metallica's music. Like, there's this one story about how he introduced the band to Ennio Morricone.
The composer, wait, seriously?
Yep. And you can hear those influences in songs like Orion, that haunting melody.
Wow, I never would have made that connection.
It's fascinating how he pushed the band to think outside the box.
It really makes you wonder what else he would have achieved.
Yeah.
Tragically, we lost him way too soon.
A huge loss for the music world.
Back to the Front doesn't shy away from that, It talks about the impact of his death on the band.
It was devastating for them, both personally and musically.
Totally. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the album's legacy. I mean, this thing went way beyond just topping the charts.
Master of Puppets became a cultural phenomenon.
It spoke to a whole generation.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the music was just so powerful. Innovative, but catchy.
It's true.
And the lyrics, man, they tapped into these universal feelings of alienation, that struggle against authority.
Yeah. You can't underestimate the power of those themes, especially for young people.
Back to the Front even talks about how some of the lyrics in Welcome Home Sanitarium were inspired by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that whole idea of societal pressures and, feeling trapped, it's all there in the music.
And don't forget the political climate back then.
The 80s were intense.
The Cold War, Reaganism. There was a lot of anxiety in the air. Metallica tapped into that,
Yeah.
They gave voice to that frustration and rebellion.
Totally. The book also gives us a glimpse into the band's personal lives at the time.
They were dealing with a lot, especially with addiction.
It's pretty raw and honest.
But you also see their incredible bond, their camaraderie.
Yeah, they really had each other's backs through all of it.
Back to the Front doesn't just tell the story of an album, it tells the story of a band, warts and all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, after reading Back to the Front, did any particular track from the album kind of hit you differently?
For me, it was Disposable Heroes.
Really? Why that one?
Reading about how they created it, the insane amount of work that went into it, the exhaustion they were feeling from touring, it just gave me a whole new respect for the song.
Yeah, their dedication to their craft was incredible.
So we've gone pretty deep here. What's the biggest takeaway from Back to the Front for you?
I think it's that Master of Puppets is more than just an album. It's like a cultural time capsule, It captures a moment in history, and it shows us the power of raw talent and sheer determination.
Couldn't agree more. And for anyone listening who wants to explore this further, here's something to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
Back to the Front really highlights how Metallica's sound evolved after Cliff Burton's death. But what if he had lived? What do you think Master of Puppets would have sounded like? How would his unique vision have shaped their later albums?
That's a great question. And it's one that I think every Metallica fan has probably pondered at some point.
Back to the Front gives us the tools to really delve into that question and come up with our own conclusions.
So crank up Master Puppets, grab a copy of Back to the Front, and get ready to go on a metal journey like no other.
You won't regret it.
Until next time.
Keep on rocking!